quiet question drifts into your mind tonight. What did life feel like in a tiny northern village where the world moved slowly, the nights felt endless, and the air carried a silence soft enough to make your eyelids grow heavy? As you listen, you might feel your body relaxing, as if warmed by the gentle sound of a distant crackling fire. Let this moment be calm, steady, and unhurried. Now, take a slow breath, loosen your shoulders, and settle in as we begin our quiet journey to the far edges of the 1800s North. Before we go further, I'd love to know, from which country are you listening tonight, and what time is it there as your day winds down? If you enjoy calming historical stories like this, you're welcome to tap like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps this restful space continue to grow. Far at the edge of the map, there were small northern villages where time didn't rush. Days passed gently, shaped by soft winds, long shadows, and routines carried out with unhurried patience. Nothing was loud. Nothing demanded attention. Life unfolded at a pace that soothed rather than pushed. Homes sat quietly against the vast landscape, built from sturdy timber that villagers shaped with their own hands. Each cabin carried the soft scent of wood smoke and warm air rising from a humble fire. These fires warmed the rooms, but only by the will of the most merciful who allowed warmth to flow through them. Their glow brought families closer, especially when the wind whispered outside. If you listen closely, you might imagine the way the wooden floorboards creaked beneath gentle footsteps. The sound was soft, almost comforting, like a slow reminder that everything around you was lived in, familiar, and peaceful. In these northern homes, silence wasn't empty, it was calming. Daily routines in these remote places rarely changed, and that predictability brought a unique kind of peace. People rose with the pale morning light because every moment of daylight mattered. Their chores were steady, tending animals, repairing tools, gathering wood. Tasks weren't rushed. They had a rhythm that matched the soft beat of the land. Every so often, allow yourself to drift deeper into the quiet. Notice how your breathing slows as you sink into this gentle pace. This is your little reminder to rest your mind, just as northern villagers rested theirs. In the afternoons, when the sun hung low, villagers often stepped outside to take in the icy air. The landscape stretched endlessly, with rolling snow and quiet forests meeting the horizon. Even in silence, the environment felt full, alive with small details like the crunch of snow or the flutter of distant birds. The cold, even at its strongest, was met with quiet resilience. People wrapped themselves in wool garments and thick layers, knowing that comfort came through preparation and care. They respected the land's harshness without fear, understanding it as part of their life cycle. Inside their homes, evenings moved even slower. Light from simple lamps flickered across the walls, casting soft shadows that danced gently with the draft. Families gathered to share food, stories, and warmth. Nothing extravagant, just moments of connection that made long nights feel shorter. Another soft reminder arrives now. It's okay to let your thoughts drift. Let them wander like footsteps through snow, slow and quiet, without needing to reach any destination. Beyond the warmth of each home, the village itself stayed still after dusk. Paths between cabins were covered in snow, marked only by the faint prints of boots or sled runners. The air was calm. Even the wind seemed to move carefully, as though it didn't want to disturb the night. A sense of closeness filled the entire settlement. With only a few families living side by side, everyone knew each other deeply. Support and cooperation weren't special events, they were daily habits. People shared tools, food, and time, creating a community woven together with steady trust. During the longest winters, the sky often stayed dim for hours at a time. Yet villagers found comfort in this darkness. They saw it not as a burden, but as a quiet companion. Nights offered time for reflection, gentle conversations, and moments of stillness that brought calm to the heart. Let this be another soft anchor. The slower the world around you becomes, the easier it is to sink into rest. Allow that steady rhythm to wrap around you like a warm blanket. Toward the end of the day, as fires dimmed and rooms cooled slightly, people prepared for sleep. Beds were simple, made of wood and layered with furs or woven blankets. As they lay down, the quiet outside blended with the gentle creaks within the home, creating a natural lullaby. In these remote northern villages, the edge of the map wasn't a place of danger or loneliness. It was a place of steady routines, quiet resilience, and peaceful nights that allowed the mind to settle, much like yours is settling now. As the night deepened in these far northern villages, the world outside became incredibly still. Snow settled softly on rooftops, and the faint glow of the moon lit the ground with a gentle, silver tone. Nothing hurried. Nothing pushed forward. Everything simply rested. And as you listen, you're welcome to let the same stillness settle gently over your thoughts tonight. Inside the cabins, families often sat together for a little while longer, doing small, quiet tasks. Some repaired clothing, some shaped wooden tools, and some simply enjoyed the peaceful silence shared between them. These slow moments helped them appreciate the warmth they had, warmth that existed because the most merciful allowed it to ease their long nights. Every few minutes, let this serve as a soft reminder. You don't need to follow every thought. You can let them drift away like tiny snowflakes disappearing into the wind. When storms arrived, they came with a deep, muffled quiet. Snowfall thickened the air, muting every sound around the village. People stayed indoors, listening to the soft thumps on the roof as flakes piled up. There was comfort in knowing that their homes, built with care and steady hands, would keep them safe through the night. The next mornings after storms were often the calmest. Villagers stepped outside into an untouched world, smooth blankets of snow covering every path, every fence, every footprint. The silence after a storm had its own kind of peace, a fresh beginning shaped by nature's gentle touch. During these quiet mornings, the sky often carried soft pastel colors, pale pinks and icy blues drifting slowly across the horizon. Breath turned into little clouds in the cold air, rising and fading away. People moved slowly, matching the rhythm of the landscape. A little reminder returns here. Breathe softly and let your shoulders fall. You're doing well by simply resting. Even in the harsh cold, villagers found beauty in their surroundings. The shimmer of frost along wooden beams, the distant outline of pine forests, and the slow swirl of smoke rising from chimneys all created scenes that felt peaceful, almost meditative. Life in these remote places was not rushed, it was observed quietly. The limited daylight taught them to value every moment the sun offered. When a bright winter day came, people savored it. They used the light for chores, walked to check on neighbors, or enjoyed the brief warmth that sunlight provided through the windows. When the light faded once again, evenings returned to their signature stillness. Lamps flickered. Fires hummed. Families spoke in gentle tones, their voices soft enough not to disturb the night. This was a world where silence wasn't a void, it was comfort. Here's another soft anchor for your rest. Allow each sound around you, even the quiet ones, to guide you into deeper calm. At times, the northern sky offered a gentle spectacle. Not a loud or dramatic one, just faint ribbons of color drifting overhead. Villagers would step outside briefly, wrapped in warm layers, to watch the lights shimmer in silence. Moments like these reminded them of the vastness above and the peacefulness below. The quiet world at the edge of the map was shaped by small routines. Fetching water, preparing food, gathering wood, tending animals, each task grounding the day with simple purpose. These routines helped balance the long nights and kept life steady and predictable. And when fatigue settled in after the day's slow but steady work, people eased into sleep naturally. They knew the land could be harsh, the nights long, and the cold unyielding, yet they found tranquility in the rhythm of their lives. They trusted their preparation, their community, and the quiet guidance of each day. Another gentle reminder meets you here. You can let go of any tension you still feel. Allow your thoughts to soften, like snowflakes melting into warm hands. As the village settled into the deepest part of the night, all that remained was the faint glow of embers and the soft hush of wind outside. Homes darkened. Conversations faded. The world rested. And in that rest, there was peace, pure, quiet, and steady. If you imagine walking through such a village at this hour, you would hear almost nothing. Perhaps the distant crunch of snow under your feet, or the soft groan of a wooden beam adjusting to the cold. These tiny sounds were gentle companions in the silence. By the time the night reached its calmest point, every home was wrapped in stillness. Families slept soundly, knowing morning would bring its slow rhythm once again. Nothing forced, nothing rushed, just another day shaped by nature's quiet hand. And so, as this segment draws to a gentle close, allow yourself to sink deeper into calm. Let the quiet of those remote northern villages drift into your own night, bringing you warmth, rest, and the gentle rhythm you need to sleep peacefully. If you'd like the next segment or wish to build the full narration, I'm here and ready to help. The homes in remote northern villages during the 1800s were shaped by necessity, patience, and the quiet understanding of the land. Each cabin was built from thick timber, arranged carefully to keep out the biting cold. As you imagine stepping inside one of these homes, you might feel an immediate sense of calm, the kind that settles into your chest like warm air from a steady fireplace, granted by the will of the most merciful who allows warmth to ease hardship. Everything inside these homes served a purpose, yet nothing felt rushed. The silence made every space feel safe. The wooden walls carried a subtle scent of smoke and pine, a natural fragrance comforting to anyone returning from a cold. Lanterns cast soft, golden light across the room, creating gentle shadows that swayed with each small movement. Villagers relied on these lights not for brightness, but for a sense of warmth and orientation. They saved oil carefully, using only what was needed. The dim glow made evenings quieter, encouraging thoughts to slow down and drift the way snowflakes drift through the calm northern air. The heart of every home was the fire, built in a modest hearth of stone. Flames weren't large or dramatic. They burned low and steady, offering warmth in a rhythm that matched the peaceful atmosphere. Families gathered around the fire not just for heat, but to share simple moments, soft conversations, quiet tasks, or comforting silence. The fire's crackles were gentle reminders that even in the harshest winters, relief existed through the mercy of the Almighty who allowed heat to spread from the glowing embers. Most interiors were small, but they never felt empty. Wooden shelves lined the walls, holding tools, bowls, preserved food, and simple belongings shaped by careful hands. Every shelf told a story of patience and preparation. Villagers knew that survival in the north was a slow craft built over many years, and their homes reflected that steady dedication. Even the creak of a shelf or the soft thump of a closing wooden door added to the home's comforting rhythm. Furniture was simple and handmade, built from local wood that villagers shaped themselves. Chairs were sturdy, with smooth surfaces worn down by years of use. Tables were thick and heavy, designed to last through countless winters. Beds were raised slightly off the ground, made with wooden frames and covered with thick layers of wool or fur for warmth. Nothing was extravagant, but everything was deeply practical, grounding the home in a warmth that soothed both body and mind. During the coldest months, families spent long hours inside, making the cabin feel alive with soft activity. Someone might mend clothing, stitching slowly under faint lamplight. Another might prepare food, chopping quietly at the table. These sounds, scissors snipping, knives tapping, thread sliding through fabric, created a soft, domestic orchestra that filled the room without breaking the peaceful silence. When wind pressed against the walls, the cabin responded with gentle groans, the wood adjusting to the cold. These sounds didn't alarm the villagers. They were familiar, almost reassuring. The home spoke its own language, one of endurance and calm acceptance. Hearing it reminded people that they were protected from the harshness outside, wrapped in the safety of a place built with their own hands. The layout of the home was often open and simple. A single room might serve as kitchen, workspace, and living area. Families adapted easily to shared spaces, moving around one another with quiet cooperation. Privacy was limited, but closeness brought comfort. Shared routines created a natural harmony, each person contributing to the peaceful rhythm of the day. Cooking was done in heavy iron pots placed near the fire. Stews simmered slowly for hours, filling the home with warm, earthy aromas. Ingredients were simple: root vegetables, grains, preserved meat or fish, and the meals nourished the body with the blessing of the one who provides sustenance. The long cooking time added extra warmth and a soothing sound, the soft bubbling of broth blending with the fire's gentle crackles. Storage areas were tucked neatly into corners or overhead spaces. Every item had a place because clutter could make a small home feel cramped. Villagers stored wood carefully, stacked in tidy piles near the stove so they wouldn't need to step outside during storms. They kept dried herbs, grain sacks, and preserved food in cool corners, treated with care and gratitude for the provisions granted to them. Windows were small, designed to preserve heat. Frost often formed beautiful patterns on the glass during winter mornings, delicate shapes shimmering in the faint light. These patterns changed day by day, reflecting the shifting weather outside. Villagers sometimes paused to observe them, finding quiet beauty in the simplicity of nature's designs. The floors, made of sturdy planks, were swept often to remove snow, dirt, and bits of wood brought in from outside. Cleanliness wasn't about strict habits. It was about comfort. A tidy space made long winters feel more bearable, and sweeping became a calming daily ritual. The soft scrape of a broom across would added its own rhythm to the house. As daylight faded early in northern regions, lamps and fires became the center of the home once again. Evening routines were gentle, folding blankets, adjusting clothing layers, placing tools back in their proper spots. Each action felt like preparing the house for rest, creating a slow transition from activity to stillness. Night settled in naturally, without the need for any signal or reminder. Homes in these distant villages weren't large or decorative, but they were havens, quiet, warm, and built with care. They held stories of resilience, family, and the patient work of everyday life. Even the simplest room carried layers of meaning shaped by years of shared routines and steady habits. These were spaces that whispered calm. As you imagine these homes, let the stillness settle into your breath. The slow rhythm of wooden cabins, quiet fires, and soft lamp glow mirrors the rhythm you can ease into tonight. During the deepest parts of winter, families often gathered around the hearth not out of urgency, but out of a shared desire for warmth and companionship. The fire's glow filled the room with a soft amber light, casting gentle movement across the walls. These quiet evenings allowed people to settle into peaceful activities, sorting dried herbs, polishing simple tools, or sharing calm stories. Nothing demanded energy. The home encouraged slowness, reminding everyone that rest was also a necessary part of survival granted through the mercy of Allah who allows ease after hardship. Snowstorms frequently swept across the region, muffling the world outside. Thick layers of snow pressed against doors and piled up on windowsills, but inside, the home felt safe and steady. The sound of wind against wooden walls became a familiar hum, blending into the background like a natural lullaby. Families knew the storm would pass, and they trusted the strength of the home they had built. That trust brought a sense of relief, a quiet confidence that helped them sleep through the night. On mornings after heavy snowfall, the first light revealed roofs and pathways covered in untouched white. The moment someone opened the door, cold air swept in with a crisp sharpness, but the home behind them remained warm. Villagers stepped out carefully, brushing snow from the doorway, making sure the path was clear. These tasks were small but meaningful, grounding them in the rhythm of caring for their home, an act of gratitude for the shelter given to them. Inside, the fire was rekindled with practiced ease. A few pieces of wood, a steady hand, and patience were enough to bring the hearth back to life. The early morning warmth spread slowly, turning the cold room into a comfortable sanctuary. The scent of smoke mingled with the faint aroma of breakfast porridge or freshly boiled water, soft cues that the day had gently begun. As midday arrived, sunlight filtered through the small windows, painting stripes of light across the floor. Dust motes floated slowly in the warm air, catching the light in a way that made the space feel peaceful and still. Even the simplest details, wooden beams overhead, smooth-worn table edges, or a stack of neatly folded cloth, contributed to the home's calming presence. Everything felt in its place, shaped by years of steady living. Another part of daily life inside these homes was repairing what needed care. Tools dulled over time, clothing wore thin, and baskets loosened. Instead of discarding things, Villagers repaired them patiently. Each stitch or sanding stroke carried a quiet purpose. These tasks reminded them that even simple belongings could serve them well when treated with care, by the permission of the Almighty who allows benefit to come through these materials. In the evenings, after the day's responsibilities had ended, the family space softened once again. Lamps were lit carefully, their warm glow settling over each corner. People spoke in low voices, if at all, letting the room fill with shared silence. The quiet helped everyone unwind, especially after long days in cold weather. Children played simple games on the floor, their laughter soft and warm. As night deepened, the home embraced a hushed calm. Beds were arranged with thick blankets, and families settled in, grateful for the warmth wrapping around them. The fire dimmed to glowing embers, casting faint red light across the room. Even this small glow offered comfort, a sign that heat still lingered and would gently fade as the night went on. It was enough to help everyone drift into rest. There were moments when the home felt almost like a living companion, creaking softly as temperatures changed, humming faintly with the crackle of fire, or stirring with the gentle sway of wind outside. These sounds weren't disturbing, they were reassuring. They reminded the villagers that their shelter was strong, steady, and with them through every season. During long winters, the home became a sanctuary of warmth and routine. It sheltered families from cold winds, enveloped them in calm, and gave them space to breathe. Its walls were simple, but they held memories of laughter, conversation, preparation, and quiet reflection. These modest cabins shaped the heart of northern village life, offering peace through their simplicity. The feeling of safety that came from being inside such a home lingered long after the fires dimmed. Even when darkness stretched across the horizon for many hours, villagers knew they had a place of rest waiting for them. A place where time slowed, worry softened, and warmth settled gently around their bodies. And as the night came to its quietest point, the home rested too. Its wooden frame held steady against the cold, its hearth glowing faintly. In that silent hour, families slept deeply, trusting the structure around them, and recognizing that even in the harshest climates, calm could flourish under the shelter given to them with divine mercy. Morning in remote northern villages of the 1800s began softly, with pale lights slowly stretching across the snow-covered landscape. There were no loud alarms, no urgent noises, just a gentle brightening that signaled the start of a new day. People woke gradually, adjusting their eyes to the cool glow filtering through small frosted windows. The quiet rhythm of the environment guided them, and the stillness reminded them that every day unfolded by the will of the most merciful who allowed ease after effort and calm after rest. Life moved with the land, never against it. Families began their routines with simple tasks that brought warmth and steadiness into the home. Someone added wood to the hearth, coaxing flames back to life so the room could warm before the cold settled too deeply. The sound of crackling fire mingled with the gentle clatter of wooden tools and soft footsteps on planked floors. Breakfast was prepared without rush, warm porridge or bread accompanied by whatever the season allowed. These modest meals carried gratitude, each bite a reminder of sustenance provided through divine mercy. Stepping outside, villagers felt the crisp air greet their skin instantly. Their breaths formed soft clouds that floated upward before disappearing into the sky. The snow beneath their boots compressed with a familiar crunch, a steady rhythm that marked the start of outdoor chores. Animals needed feeding, water needed fetching, and tools required checking. These tasks weren't dramatic. They were predictable, grounding, and necessary. The villagers understood that tending to the land and their homes wasn't just labor. It was an act of care that sustained their families. Chores continued throughout the morning, each one blending into the next. Wood was gathered and chopped, creating tall stacks that would later feed fires. Snow was cleared from paths so movement remained safe and manageable. Fences were repaired, sleds checked, and outdoor structures inspected for damage from wind or heavy snowfall. The work required patience rather than speed, and every step felt connected to the natural rhythm of the settlement. Inside the homes, others continued tasks that kept daily life smooth and balanced. Clothing was mended under the soft glow of lamplight, and small items were crafted from wood or bone. Children learned these skills early, guided gently by parents and elders. The atmosphere was calm, and every action carried intention. The faint sound of sewing, the quiet scraping of a carving tool, and the repetitive brushing of wool all contributed to a peaceful domestic rhythm. As the morning sun climbed higher, though still dim compared to southern regions, villagers often paused to appreciate the light. Sunlight in the far north was precious, especially during long winters when daylight hours were limited. People used this time wisely, checking on neighbors, tending to small repairs, or stepping outside for a moment to absorb the brightness. Even brief sunlight brought comfort, a warmth granted from above that lifted spirits during cold seasons. The routines continued into midday but never felt overwhelming. Life was structured, clear, and familiar. Villagers focused on maintaining what they had, preserving food, organizing tools, and preparing for shifts in weather. They learned to read small signs, the way wind moved across trees, the texture of snow beneath their boots, even the sound of distant animals. Nature spoke quietly, and they listened closely. Around midday, meals were shared simply and quietly. Food warmed their bodies, and the short rest allowed everyone to reset before continuing their tasks. Conversations were calm, and the atmosphere inside the cabin felt steady. Children played quietly, often creating small games with wooden toys or snow outside the door. Their laughter, though soft, brought warmth into the day. After eating, villagers returned to their routines, repeating steady movements perfected by generations before them. These routines weren't burdens. They were traditions passed down with love, reflecting deep respect for the land. Every activity, from repairing roofs to checking animal shelters, helped ensure the family's stability through shifting seasons. Another pattern unique to northern life was the constant monitoring of weather. Clouds could signal a coming storm, bright skies might bring a rare moment of warmth, and strong winds meant tasks needed to be done quickly. Villagers paid attention without fear, guided by their understanding that nature acted according to its design, and their role was to move in harmony with it. As afternoon settled in, the light shifted once more, growing softer and more golden. Tasks slowed naturally, encouraging people to finish their chores and prepare to return indoors. Snow sparkled faintly in the fading light, and long shadows stretched across the quiet village paths. The land itself encouraged a slower pace as the day neared its end. A gentle hush often fell over the village during these hours. Even the animals grew calmer, settling into their shelters and creating a peaceful atmosphere. This transition marked the beginning of evening routines, moments of preparation, reflection, and slow unwinding after the day's steady work. Inside the home, the hearth was fed again, lamps were lit, and warm air filled the rooms once more. The contrast between the cold outside and the cozy interior felt comforting, like returning to a familiar embrace. Families gathered, sharing their experiences of the day in quiet tones, appreciating the stillness that evening brought. These routines shaped the identity of northern life. They were simple, consistent, and deeply connected to nature's rhythms. And as night approached, these gentle patterns prepared families for another calm transition, from activity into rest, from daylight into darkness. As dusk settled across the northern landscape, the village eased into a slower rhythm. The sky dimmed gradually, shifting from pale gold to soft blue and then to muted grey. Daylight gave its final quiet farewell, and families instinctively shifted into their evening preparations. These transitions weren't marked by clocks or schedules. They followed the natural rhythm of light and shadow. People moved calmly, letting the environment guide them, trusting that each change in the sky was part of a greater pattern created by the will of Allah who governs the cycles of nature. Inside the homes, warmth grew as fires were refreshed. Sparks drifted upward in gentle arcs before disappearing into the chimney, while soft crackling sounds filled the room with a steady, soothing presence. Evening tasks were simple: arranging blankets, organizing tools for the next day, or preparing small meals that brought comfort without requiring much effort. Food simmered slowly in iron pots, filling the air with comforting aromas that wrapped around the family like a warm embrace. Villagers washed up using warm water heated earlier in the day, grateful for the ease provided through the warmth granted by the most merciful. Simple routines like washing hands or wiping faces with steam-softened cloths carried their own quiet satisfaction. These small acts refreshed the body and signaled that the day's harder work was done. The calm of the evening settled deeper with every familiar motion. As families gathered around the hearth, the room glowed with gentle light. Shadows swayed softly on the wooden walls, creating slow, rhythmic movements that felt comforting to watch. Children listened to soft conversations or played with handmade toys shaped from wood, bone, or scraps of cloth. Their laughter was quiet and warm, never disturbing the peace of the evening but blending into it naturally. Outside, the village fell into deep stillness. Snow softened every surface, absorbing sound and making footsteps almost silent. Animals retreated to their shelters, and even the wind often drifted lightly, as if tired from the long day. Villagers sometimes stepped out briefly to observe the sky, whether filled with faint stars, passing clouds, or soft shimmering lights. Each night held its own quiet beauty. Returning inside always felt like stepping back into a sanctuary. The transition from cold air to warm room reminded villagers to slow down even further. They hung their outer garments carefully, letting snow melt into small puddles near the door. The scent of warm wood, wool, and cooked food filled the room, grounding everyone in the comforts of home. Evening meals were gentle and steady. Families ate slowly, savoring each bite without rush. These moments allowed them to reconnect with one another after a day spent between home and the snowy outdoors. Conversations remained soft, reflecting the calmness of their surroundings. When the meal ended, dishes were cleaned with the same quiet care that defined all their routines. As the night deepened, families prepared for rest. Beds were arranged with layers of wool and fur to keep them warm through the long northern hours. Children nestled in first, drifting into sleep as the room's warmth wrapped around them. Adults followed soon after, taking a moment to appreciate the stillness that filled their home, a stillness made possible by shelter, fire, and the divine mercy that allowed them to find peace in such a harsh climate. The home dimmed as lamps were carefully extinguished, leaving only the faint glow of embers in the hearth. The gentle red light flickered across the room, creating a soft lull that made it easy for eyes to grow heavy. This was a time when even thoughts slowed down, sinking into the quiet of the night. Outside, the village carried almost no sound. The snow-covered paths slept under the moon, and the surrounding forests rested in silence. This serenity helped villagers sleep deeply, knowing their homes stood strong through the night. These were places built with intention, simple, sturdy, and made to protect. In this deep hour, families were united in rest, their breath sinking quietly with the stillness around them. The rhythm of their lives, shaped by nature, slowed to its gentlest point. The certainty of another day, another routine, another peaceful cycle brought them comfort, easing their hearts into deeper sleep. And when the village reached its quietest moment, there was a sense of harmony that only remote northern life could create, a harmony formed by steady routines, the calm of nature, and the quiet blessings that made each day possible. Food in remote northern villages of the 1800s wasn't rushed, extravagant, or filled with variety. It was shaped by patience, preparation, and careful respect for the land. Each meal reflected the steady effort behind it. When villagers woke to begin their day, they relied on ingredients preserved, gathered, or grown over months. These meals carried a quiet sense of gratitude, for nourishment only reached their tables through the mercy of Allah, who allowed crops to grow, animals to thrive, and weather to remain manageable enough for survival. The simplicity of their meals made each bite meaningful. Much of their food came from what they stored during warmer seasons. Root vegetables like potatoes and carrots were kept in cool cellars, protected from frost. Grains, dried fish, and salted meat filled tightly sealed wooden barrels. Every item had a purpose, and none were wasted. This storage wasn't just a method of survival. It was a ritual of preparation that reminded villagers to think ahead with patience and discipline. The knowledge that their work in summer and autumn would sustain them through winter brought calm assurance. In the early mornings, cooking began slowly. A pot was placed over the hearth, warmed by a gentle fire that had been revived from the night before. The The soft bubbling of porridge or soup joined the crackling of logs, creating a soundscape that made the home feel safe and alive. Villagers stirred their meals with wooden spoons, moving in steady, unhurried motions. Breakfast wasn't rushed. It eased families into the day, warming their bodies for the tasks awaiting them in the cold air outside. Bread was another comforting staple. Though simple, it required time and consistency. Dough was kneaded patiently, left to rise near the warm hearth, then baked in small ovens or over heated stones. The aroma of warm bread drifted through the cabin, giving the home a sense of comfort that lingered long after the loaves were eaten. Even a small piece of bread held significance, carrying the effort of gathering flour, kneading dough, and tending to heat, all actions made possible through divine mercy. For lunch or midday meals, villagers often prepared hearty stews that simmered slowly for hours. These stews combined what was available: preserved meat, vegetables, grains, and sometimes herbs grown in the short northern summers. The longer the pot simmered, the richer the flavors became. Families valued these meals not only for warmth but also for their steadiness. A warm pot waiting on the hearth brought comfort after hours spent working in the cold. During warmer months, villagers foraged for berries, herbs, and edible plants. They gathered with care, taking only what was needed and thanking the land for its offerings. These seasonal ingredients added rare bursts of freshness to meals. Berries were preserved into jams or dried for winter, and herbs were hung from rafters to dry, their scents filling the home with subtle reminders of summer days. Nothing was taken for granted. Fishing provided an important source of food as well. Villagers worked together to pull in nets during the brief warmer seasons or used ice holes to fish during winter. Fish were cleaned, salted, smoked, or dried with practice movements passed down through generations. Each preserved fish represented future nourishment, a quiet promise that even in the bleakest seasons, food would still reach the table through the blessings of the most merciful. Inside the home, the kitchen area blended into the living space. Pots hung neatly on hooks, wooden bowls sat stacked on shelves, and ingredients were stored with care. The organization wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about ensuring that everything needed for daily meals was within easy reach. This sense of order helped make the home feel balanced and calm, especially when routines became repetitive during long winters. Evenings brought their own gentle rituals. Before preparing dinner, villagers often checked their supplies, deciding what needed replenishing or what should be preserved next. These decisions required thoughtfulness. A single jar of preserved berries might be saved for special moments, while dried fish or grains were used more freely. Planning meals was an act of mindfulness, ensuring that resources lasted through unpredictable weather. Dinner was typically warm, filling, and shared. Families gathered around a modest table, speaking softly as they enjoyed their food. The warmth from the hearth mixed with the aroma of stew or bread, creating an intimate, soothing environment. These meals strengthened family bonds, offering time to share small stories about the day or simply enjoy peaceful silence. During harsh weather, food preparation became even more important. Families checked stocks more frequently, measured portions carefully, and made stews that could stretch for days. This careful management wasn't driven by fear. It was guided by wisdom. They trusted that effort, patience, and divine mercy would sustain them through every snowfall and storm. Snacks were minimal but meaningful. A piece of dried fruit, a slice of bread with warm broth, or a handful of nuts became small luxuries. Children especially found joy in these treats, savoring each bite with fascination. These moments brought warmth to family life, proving that even in a simple world, joy could bloom from small comforts. Cooking tools were handmade and treasured. Wooden spoons, clay pots, and iron kettles were passed down from one generation to the next. These items were treated with respect not because they were valuable, but because they had supported families through years of hardship and ease. Their usefulness was a blessing, a reminder that even the simplest objects could carry great benefit by Allah's permission. As day turned to evening, the kitchen grew quieter. Pots were cleaned, ashes swept, and the hearth prepared for night. The last warmth of the fire softened the room, helping families settle into their routines of rest. Each night, The gentle satisfaction of a warm meal helped ease tired bodies into peaceful sleep. During the coldest months, preserving food became more than a routine. It was a lifeline shaped by generations of practice. Families checked their cellars carefully, noting which barrels of grains were running low and which jars of vegetables needed to be eaten soon. The cold air outside helped keep certain foods naturally frozen, reducing the need for extra storage methods. Yet even with nature's help, villagers relied on thoughtful planning, trusting that careful preparation and the mercy of Allah would carry them through long winters. Smoking and drying foods were common methods to extend their usefulness. Strips of fish or meat hung above controlled fires, absorbing warmth and smoke. The scent filled the home gently, a reminder of the patience required in the process. Each piece needed time, hours, sometimes days. Families waited, watched, and checked the texture with practiced fingers. When finished, these foods were stored away for the harshest days, acting as small treasures of nourishment for the future. Salt was another valuable tool. Used for preserving meat and fish, it allowed food to last weeks or even months. Applying salt took precision. Too much made the food unpleasant, too little left it vulnerable. Villagers developed a natural instinct for the right balance, guided by years of quiet experience. They worked without rush, letting each layer of salt settle and do its work. This slow method ensured the food would remain safe and nourishing when fresh ingredients were scarce. Warm months offered rare opportunities to replenish supplies. Families tended small gardens, growing hardy vegetables that could survive northern climates. They harvested each plant with care, treating every potato, carrot, and onion as a vital part of their winter preparation. Gardens weren't large, but they provided steady support. The blessing of even a modest harvest brought relief and gratitude, knowing these plants were sustained by the one who controls all growth. Foraging also played a significant role. When summer arrived, villagers walked through forests and meadows, gathering berries, herbs, mushrooms, and edible greens. Each find carried value. Berries were preserved into jams or dried into chewy, nutrient-rich strips. Herbs were tied in bundles and hung in kitchens, their scents slowly filling the air as they dried. Foraged foods added flavor and variety to winter meals, transforming simple stews into something more comforting. Fishing remained important throughout the year. During warmer months, villagers took small boats to rivers or coastal waters, pulling in nets heavy with fish. In winter, they cut holes into frozen lakes, lowering lines into icy depths. The process was slow and required patience, but each successful catch felt rewarding. These fish, once cleaned and preserved, became a dependable part of daily meals. Water, though abundant in the form of snow and ice, required effort to prepare. Families melted snow in large pots over the fire, ensuring it became clean and safe to use. The process was slow but necessary. Water carried through divine mercy nourished their bodies, cooked their meals, and warmed them through broths and teas made from herbs gathered in summer. Meals often reflected the seasons. In winter, hearty stews and warm breads dominated the table. In late spring and early summer, meals were lighter, using fresh greens and occasional early harvests. As autumn approached, families worked together to pickle vegetables, smoke fish, and store everything in preparation for the dark months ahead. These cycles created a steady rhythm, one that grounded villagers in the natural flow of time. During long evenings, families often gathered to prepare ingredients together. Children helped wash vegetables or sort grains, learning the skills they would one day rely on. Adults chopped, stirred, and arranged food with practiced comfort. These shared moments created a sense of unity, making even simple tasks feel meaningful. The sound of chopping, the warmth of the fire, and the soft murmur of conversation shaped an atmosphere of peaceful cooperation. Even in scarcity, villagers preserved a sense of gratitude. When a meal turned out particularly warm or flavorful, families acknowledged the blessing in it. They knew food wasn't guaranteed, and each season brought its own challenges. This understanding taught them to appreciate everything on their plates, no matter how simple. During severe storms, the importance of stored food became even more clear. Roads disappeared beneath snow, animals sheltered indoors, and winds made travel impossible. In these moments, families relied entirely on what they had prepared. The feeling of pulling out a jar of preserved vegetables or a bundle of smoked fish brought relief. It was a reminder that patience and preparation had paid off. Evening meals during such storms felt especially comforting. The fire crackled softly, and outside, the world lay silent under layers of snow. Inside, warmth, food, and company created a pocket of peace. Families ate slowly, savoring each bite as the wind hummed against the walls. These meals didn't just nourish the body, they calmed the heart. At night, after dishes were cleaned and the hearth tended, families rested knowing they were prepared for tomorrow. The quiet confidence that came from careful work and the steady rhythm of food preservation helped them drift into sleep with ease. The home felt secure, and the knowledge that provisions would last brought deep comfort. Food, in these northern villages, wasn't merely sustenance. It was a reflection of patience, unity, and trust in the natural cycles of life, cycles sustained by the mercy of Allah. And as each day closed, villagers found comfort in knowing that their slow, careful work would continue to nourish them through every season. Winter nights in remote northern villages of the 1800s felt longer than anywhere else. Darkness didn't simply fall, it lingered, stretching across the land with a calm, unhurried patience. The sun dipped below the horizon early, leaving behind a sky painted in deep blues and faint silver hues. As the light faded, villagers settled into a slower rhythm, moving with the softness of the night rather than resisting it. These long hours of darkness weren't frightening. They were enveloping, like a thick blanket that quieted the world by the mercy of Allah who allows ease within every hardship. When families stepped outside in the early evening, the cold embraced them instantly. Their breaths rose in pale clouds that drifted upward, fading into the sky. Snow muffled every sound, making footsteps soft and the air still. The village seemed to breathe with its own slow rhythm, each home glowing faintly from within. Lamps flickered through frosted windows, casting warm, golden squares onto the snow. This gentle contrast between cold darkness and warm light brought a sense of peace to the people who lived there. Inside their homes, evenings unfolded quietly. Fires were stoked, sending waves of warmth through each cabin. Sparks drifted upward before disappearing in the chimney, leaving behind a soft glow that filled the room. Families often stayed close to the hearth, letting the warmth seep into their bones after a day spent in icy air. The crackle of burning would replace the noise of the outside world, acting as a reminder that comfort existed even in the coldest seasons through divine mercy. As night deepened, villagers turned to calm indoor activities. Some mended clothing, working slowly under the gentle light of lanterns. Others carved wooden tools or repaired small household items. The steady movements of their hands created a quiet rhythm, the soft scrape of a knife against wood, the whisper of fabric being stitched. These sounds blended seamlessly with the crackling fire, shaping an atmosphere that soothed the mind. Children played simple games, their voices soft enough not to disturb the calm. They built small structures from wooden blocks, traced shapes in the frost forming at the edges of windows, or curled up near their parents to listen to stories. These stories were gentle, meant to pass time rather than excite. They spoke of seasons, distant animals, or lessons learned long ago. The quietness of the night connected families, helping them appreciate the warmth of being together. From time to time, someone stepped outside to check the weather. Opening the door let in a sharp chill that bit at their cheeks. But the outside world often greeted them with breathtaking stillness. Snow shimmered under faint moonlight, and the sky opened wide above the treetops. The crisp air filled their lungs, and the silence felt almost sacred, not because of anything mystical, but because stillness itself is calming, a blessing allowed by the Creator who made night a time for rest. Returning to the cabin always felt like stepping into a sanctuary. The warmth wrapped around them instantly, easing the cold from their skin. Layers of woolen clothing were hung near the door to dry, small patches of melted snow forming beneath them. This return from cold to warmth became its own nightly ritual, a reminder of the balance between the outer world and the inner comfort of home. Meals during these long nights were simple but deeply satisfying. Pots simmered on the hearth, filling the room with rich, earthy aromas. Bowls of warm stew or broth soothed tired bodies, offering much-needed warmth after a day of work. Families ate slowly, savoring each bite. These meals weren't elaborate, but they brought comfort through their consistency and the nourishment they provided. After eating, the family often gathered again by the fire. Adults shared soft reflections about the day. How much would they gathered, how animals fared, or what tasks awaited tomorrow. Their voices were low, blending seamlessly into the atmosphere of calm. Conversations didn't need to be long or complex. They simply anchored the family in togetherness. As the fire continued to burn, shadows danced gently along the wooden walls, shifting whenever the flames changed direction. This movement had a soothing effect, drawing tired eyes into quiet observation. Watching the flicker of firelight became its own form of relaxation, helping stress melt away after hours spent in the cold. When the night grew even darker, villagers began preparing for sleep. Thick blankets were laid across beds, and furs were placed at the foot to keep feet warm through the long hours ahead. These preparations were unhurried, guided by simple gestures that made rest more inviting. The home grew softer with each passing moment, every sound becoming quieter as families settled down. Even the cabin itself responded to the cold. Wooden beams creaked softly as temperatures shifted, but these sounds were familiar companions in winter, never alarming, always expected. They reminded the villagers that the home was alive in its own way, expanding and contracting as the night wore on. Once the lamps were extinguished, only the faint glow of the fire remained. Embers pulsed gently, their light barely enough to illuminate the room. Yet this dim glow felt comforting. It created a sense of presence, a subtle assurance that warmth would remain a little longer before morning came. Outside, darkness stretched endlessly across the land. Snow-covered ground reflected whatever faint light the sky offered, creating a quiet glow across the village. The silence was profound, deep enough to make the world feel suspended in time. For the villagers, this stillness brought rest, not just physically, but emotionally. Winter nights that lasted so long also held a calm that settled over every heart. As the hours stretched deeper into the night, the world outside remained wrapped in a silence so complete it felt almost like a soft, endless breath. Snow blanketed every sound, muffling even the faintest movement. The village sat still, each cabin glowing faintly from within, like small lanterns scattered across a vast, frozen landscape. Inside those homes, families rested in their own rhythms, trusting that the long night, like every season, unfolded under the care of Allah who brings ease and calm to those who seek it. Sometimes, villagers awoke briefly in the middle of the night, not out of fear, but out of habit. They added a piece of wood to the fire, adjusted a blanket, or checked on sleeping children. These movements were quiet and instinctive, done without disturbing the peace of the night. Even half awake, the home guided them gently. The warmth from the hearth, the soft glow of embers, the subtle scent of smoke lingering in the air. All of it reassured them that their shelter remained steady. Outside, the northern sky often held a beauty that belonged only to places far from crowded lands. On clear nights, stars glittered sharply, untouched by smoke or city lights. Their brightness stretched across the sky like a shimmering tapestry, offering a view that inspired awe, not as an act of worship, but as a reflection of the vastness and perfection of the creation shaped by the one who made the heavens and the earth. The villagers didn't seek meaning beyond that. They simply appreciated the peace it brought. When the sky shifted with faint colors, soft greens or drifting ribbons of pale light, it felt like nature was performing a gentle dance. These lights moved slowly, changing shape without urgency. Villagers who happened to witness them did so quietly, wrapped in thick layers against the cold. The lights weren't loud or dramatic. They were subtle, calming, a reminder of the beauty that could exist even in the deepest winter night. Eventually, these observers returned indoors, bringing the cold with them. Frost clung to their clothing, melting into tiny droplets as they stepped into the warm cabin. The shift from freezing air to gentle heat felt comforting every time. They shook snow from their boots, hung their outerwear near the fire, and slipped back into the slow rhythm of the night. The hours before dawn were often the coldest. During this time, the home creaked softly as wood contracted in the freezing air. These sounds, though subtle, were as familiar as the ticking of time. Families stayed wrapped in blankets, breathing quietly, letting their minds drift in and out of dreams. Rest didn't come from deep sleep alone. It came from the stillness of the world around them. In some homes, a faint warm drink was prepared if someone rose early or late into the night. A cup of hot broth or tea made from dried herbs warmed hands and calmed tired minds. These small comforts carried significance, both for their warmth and for the reminder that even in the coldest hours, kindness and care could be shared among family members. As the night continued, the village rested in unison. Snow built up outside doors, coating every surface with soft layers of white. Roofs shimmered faintly under the moonlight, and chimneys sent slow trails of smoke upward into the silent sky. Animals slept quietly in their shelters, their breath creating small clouds inside the warm stalls. Everything settled into a deep and peaceful pause. Villagers trusted that morning would come, even if the dawn seemed far away. They knew winter nights were long, but not endless. This trust allowed them to rest without worry, knowing that time moved according to divine wisdom, and that every challenge carried its own measure of ease. When the faintest hint of morning finally approached, it didn't appear suddenly. Instead, the sky softened slowly, transforming the darkness into a gentle grey. The shift was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it signaled the beginning of a new cycle, a new opportunity to work, to gather, to share warmth, and to continue living in harmony with the land. Inside each cabin, families stirred gradually. Fires were revived, blankets folded, and preparations for the day began once again. Though winter nights lasted so long, their peaceful nature gave villagers the strength needed for the cold days ahead. And as the first steps of a new morning echoed softly on wooden floors, the memory of the night's stillness remained, carrying with it the calm, the protection, and the quiet mercy found in every hour of rest. In remote northern villages of the 1800s, community wasn't something formal or organized. It was woven naturally into daily life. With only a handful of families living close together, everyone depended on each other in quiet, steady ways. Support wasn't dramatic. It appeared in simple gestures, like sharing tools, helping carry firewood, or checking on a neighbor during a storm. These bonds grew not from obligation, but from understanding that survival in such harsh landscapes was eased through cooperation granted by the mercy of Allah, who allows hearts to unite in goodness. Each morning, villagers greeted one another with subtle warmth. A nod, a shared smile, or a brief exchange about the weather carried meaning. They didn't need long conversations. The familiarity of seeing the same faces every day brought comfort, a reminder that they weren't alone in the vast northern silence. These small interactions grounded the rhythm of village life, making even the coldest mornings feel less isolating. Work often brought people together naturally. When a roof needed repair, neighbors arrived with spare wood and tools. When heavy snowfall blocked pathways, villagers helped shovel without being asked. These acts weren't recorded, celebrated, or highlighted. They were simply part of living side by side. Helping each other felt as natural as tending to one's own home, a quiet reflection of shared responsibility. Children experienced community in their own gentle way. They played together in snowy fields, building small shelters from ice blocks or sliding down hills they learned to smooth with their feet. Their laughter carried lightly through the air, adding warmth to the village atmosphere. Even during chores, children often accompanied one another, turning tasks into small adventures. These early experiences taught them cooperation long before they understood its importance. Adults, too, found comfort in companionship. Long tasks such as chopping wood or mending fishing nets were easier with two pairs of hands. While they worked, conversations were soft, discussing the weather, the animals, or small observations from the day. These talks created subtle bonds, strengthening trust among neighbors without needing grand displays of emotion. During long winters, when darkness stretched endlessly across the land, villagers relied even more on their sense of community. Someone might lend a lantern, share a bit of dried meat, or help fix a broken sled. These gestures, though small, brought reassurance. Hardship felt lighter when carried together. The cold outside felt a little less sharp when warmth inside was shared. If a storm was approaching, neighbors warned each other quickly. They spread word about shifting winds, thickening clouds, or dropping temperatures. These warnings came from experience, meant to protect one another. It was understood that looking after your neighbor meant looking after the entire village, ensuring no one faced the elements unprepared. Gatherings, though simple, offered moments of closeness. Families sometimes visited each other in the evenings, stopping by for warm drinks or quiet conversation. Homes filled with low voices, soft lamplight, and laughter that blended with the crackle of fires. These gatherings weren't celebrations. They were gentle pauses in routine, allowing people to feel connected during long, silent seasons. Food sharing was another natural part of village life. When someone had a successful fishing day or discovered an abundant patch of berries, they shared with others, not out of expectation of return, but from gratitude and kindness. They knew that wealth, whether in food or warmth, flowed through divine mercy and was never meant to be hoarded. During illness or injury, the village came together even more closely. Neighbors visited to check on the family, brought warm meals, or helped with daily chores. No one was left to struggle alone. These moments revealed the true strength of their bonds. Steady support formed through years of cooperation and quiet understanding. Children often learned from watching these acts of kindness. They observed their parents offer help without hesitation, and slowly, they too adopted the same habits. The community's values passed from one generation to the next through example, not instruction. During the short summers, community work expanded. Families helped one another gather berries, prepare fish, and repair structures worn down by winter storms. These seasons were full of movement, shared tasks, and the soft hum of cooperation. People worked side by side, creating rhythm in tasks that could have felt overwhelming alone. When evening arrived after a long day of shared work, a sense of harmony settled across the village. Lanterns glowed softly in each cabin, marking the spaces where families rested, grateful for another day completed together. This unity brought peace to the entire settlement, a calmness that made the long northern nights feel less heavy. Even in silence, the village felt alive with connection. Smoke rising from chimneys, footprints in freshly fallen snow, the soft rumble of voices in nearby homes. These subtle signs reminded everyone that support was always close. Community, in its quietest form, was the thread that held their lives together. As winter deepened, the strength of the community became even more visible. Nights grew longer, storms arrived with little warning, and cold winds pressed against every cabin. Yet through all of this, villagers stayed connected. A single knock on the door, soft but intentional, was enough to signal a neighbor checking in. These quiet gestures carried comfort. No one was left to face the freezing dark alone, and no home stood isolated in the cold sweep of winter. Their unity became a shield, a mercy granted through shared effort and compassion. During particularly harsh storms, families often gathered in one home, bringing blankets, food, and warm drinks. They sat close to the hearth, listening to the wind howl outside while sharing gentle conversation. The storm might shake the walls and pile snow against the door, but inside, warmth and companionship created a sense of safety. These moments weren't just about survival. They were about strengthening the invisible threads tying each family together. When the skies finally cleared, villagers stepped outside as one. Paths had to be dug out, roofs cleared of heavy snow, and animals checked. The work was difficult, but the village moved like a single unit. One person started a path, another widened it, and others followed behind, smoothing the snow. In this coordinated rhythm, even the harsh aftermath of a storm became manageable. During the short daylight hours of winter, people often visited one another with small offerings. An extra piece of dried fish, a handful of berries preserved from summer, or warm broth carried in a wooden cup. These acts of kindness were never grand or ceremonial. They were quiet signals of care, reminders that blessings increase when shared. Such gestures made even the coldest seasons feel lighter, warming the heart as much as the body. Children, too, played a role in the community's closeness. They ran errands between homes, delivering messages, bits of firewood, or small bundles of herbs. Their footsteps in the snow became a familiar sound, bringing with them energy and innocence that lifted spirits. Villagers often smiled when they heard children approaching, knowing their presence added a sense of life and brightness to the long winter days. In the evenings, families sometimes visited neighbors to exchange stories or discuss the coming weather. These visits were simple, no elaborate meals, no expectation of entertainment, just a quiet gathering in lamplight, with soft voices filling the room. Adults shared experiences of the day, while children sat nearby, listening and learning. These gatherings provided emotional warmth, reinforcing that every person was valued and supported. When illness touched a home, the village responded with gentle urgency. People brought warm food, helped care for animals, or took over daily chores so the affected family could rest. These acts were done without expectation, simply expressions of compassion. Villagers understood that illness could strike anyone, and support offered today might be needed tomorrow. Their unity reflected the kindness taught across generations. The passing of seasons was always a shared journey. In spring, families celebrated the melting of snow, preparing together for new tasks. In summer, they worked side by side gathering food and repairing homes. Autumn brought efforts to prepare for winter's return. Each season strengthened the community in different ways, weaving their lives into a pattern of cooperation that sustained them physically and emotionally. Even celebrations were simple and grounded in gratitude. When a particularly successful harvest or fishing season arrived, families gathered to share a larger meal, offering thanks for the provision granted by the one who sustains all. Laughter filled the room softly, carrying a warmth that lingered long after the meal ended. These moments of shared joy became memories that helped carry them through the difficult months. During long winter nights, lanterns glowing in several homes served as quiet signals of life and connection. Even when families stayed apart due to the weather, seeing those warm lights through the darkness reminded them that community was still there. They were never truly alone. Elders played an important role in guiding this togetherness. They offered advice, shared knowledge of the land, and reminded younger villagers of lessons learned in earlier seasons. Their presence brought stability, grounding the community with wisdom and experience. Children looked up to them with quiet respect, learning how to embody the same gentleness and cooperation. When disagreements arose, they were resolved calmly. The village was too small and the land too harsh for conflict to linger. People valued peace over pride, understanding that harmony was essential for survival. Soft words, patient listening, and mutual understanding helped keep bonds strong. As each day ended, a feeling of unity settled across the village. Lamps glowed behind frosted windows, fires warmed small cabins, and the quiet assurance of community filled the cold night air. Even in the deepest darkness, villagers carried a sense of security knowing they were supported by the care of others. This was the heart of northern village life, not grand events or dramatic tales, but steady, shared kindness. A community built on cooperation, trust, and compassion. Life in remote northern villages during the 1800s flowed with the natural rhythm of the seasons. Work was never random. It rose and fell like waves shaped by the weather, daylight, and the slow turning of the year. Each season brought its own set of duties, and villagers learned to embrace this rhythm with patience. Their livelihoods depended on understanding the land, recognizing signs in nature, and trusting that balance existed in every cycle. Balance allowed by the will and mercy of Allah, who created both hardship and ease within the changing seasons. Spring, though brief, marked a gentle awakening. Snow melted in slow, uneven patches, revealing earth still cold from months of frost. Villagers used this transition to assess damage left by winter. Roofs were inspected, fences repaired, and tools sharpened for the coming work. Meltwater streamed through the village, carrying small pieces of ice that glimmered in the early light. People moved carefully through the mud, grateful for the return of sunlight even if the warmth was still modest. During spring's short window, Families also planted what little crops the northern soil would allow. Hardy vegetables, root plants, cabbages, onions, were pushed gently into the damp earth. The work was quiet and hopeful. Each seed represented trust in the coming months, in the sunlight that would soon lengthen, and in the mercy of Allah who allows growth even in the harshest climates. Children often helped with planting, pressing small hands into the soil and learning the rhythm of renewal. As spring transitioned into summer, the pace of life quickened. Days grew long, so long that dusk felt more like a gentle pause than a true ending. Villagers made use of every moment of daylight, working from early morning to late evening while the land offered its brief generosity. Summer was the season of movement, repairing homes fully, gathering building materials, fishing in abundance, and tending gardens that needed constant care. Fishing trips became more frequent during this season. Boats glided across lakes or coastal waters under the steady northern sun. Nets were cast with practice movements, pulled in with teamwork, and carried back to shore with quiet gratitude. The bounty of summer fish provided food not only for immediate meals but for smoking, drying, and storing for winter. Each successful catch felt like a blessing, a sign of provision in a land where scarcity was familiar. In the forests, families gathered firewood that would later warm them through winter's bite. Trees were felled carefully, branches trimmed, and logs split with steady effort. The rhythmic thud of axes echoed softly through the woods. Though the work was demanding, villagers performed it with patience, knowing the heat from those very logs would comfort them months later. Stacking wood neatly became a small art, an act of preparation that carried its own quiet satisfaction. Summer also brought moments of subtle beauty. Wild berries ripened along the edges of forests, turning into small jewels of color amid the green. Villagers collected them in woven baskets, savoring the sweetness that nature offered so rarely in the north. These berries were eaten fresh, preserved for winter, or turned into simple jams. The act of gathering was peaceful, a reminder of the land's generosity when the seasons allowed it. As summer reached its peak, homes buzzed with activity. People repaired every tool, reinforced storage spaces, and ensured that nothing was left undone before the next season arrived. Smokehouses filled with fish, herbs dried near windows, and gardens flourished under the long hours of sunlight. Families worked side by side, each task a step in strengthening their chances for the winter ahead. Despite the busyness of summer, villagers still found time for rest in the evenings. They sat outside their cabins, watching the sun linger above the horizon far longer than it did in any other season. Children played until the sky dimmed to soft gold. Adults spoke quietly, reflecting on the day's work and the tasks still waiting for tomorrow. These moments of calm made the season feel balanced, even amid its intensity. When autumn approached, the air shifted. The first cool winds carried hints of winter, urging villagers to finish their preparations. Days shortened noticeably, and the land began to fall silent again. Leaves changed color briefly before frost claimed them. Families harvested the last of their crops, storing vegetables carefully in cellars beneath their homes. Each stored item represented security for the months ahead. Autumn was a season of urgency, but not panic. Villagers moved with purpose, checking and rechecking supplies, repairing anything that might fail during winter, and ensuring that firewood was stacked high. Smoke filled the air from smokehouses, finishing the last rounds of preserved food. Tools were stored away, and homes were sealed tightly against the coming cold. These preparations didn't stem from fear. They were acts of wisdom, shaped by generations who learned to work with the land rather than against it. They knew that winter could be both beautiful and unforgiving, and being ready brought peace of mind. As autumn days grew shorter, people took time to appreciate the fading light. They watched as the sun dipped earlier, casting longer shadows across the snow-dusted fields. The slow, gentle rhythm of the season reminded them that every cycle of work would eventually give way to rest. By the time the first deep winter winds arrived, the village was ready. Food was stored, tools were sharpened, and firewood stood in towering stacks beside each cabin. The long cold months ahead felt less daunting because of the steady, patient work completed throughout the year. When winter finally settled over the land, the pace of work shifted once more. The long, bright days of summer felt like a distant memory, replaced by short, quiet hours of pale daylight. Instead of outdoor labor dominating the schedule, villagers focused on maintaining what they had prepared. Winter wasn't a season of rushing. It was a season of preservation, of food, warmth, and energy. Tasks moved indoors, where fires burned steadily and families worked side by side under the soft glow of lanterns. This slower pace felt natural, a rhythm shaped by the land and sustained through the mercy of Allah who brings ease even in times of hardship. During these colder months, repairing clothing became a daily necessity. Heavy wool garments, coats, mittens, hats, needed mending after long walks through snow and wind. Threads were pulled through fabric with patient hands, each stitch reinforcing warmth for the days ahead. Children watched and learned, practicing small stitches under careful guidance. These repairs might have seemed ordinary, but they represented comfort and survival, ensuring that every family member stayed protected against the cold. Inside the cabin, tools also received attention. Wooden handles were sanded smooth, dull blades sharpened, and sled runners repaired. Even though much of the outdoor work paused during winter storms, villagers knew that tools must remain ready for sudden needs. Maintaining them wasn't busy work. It was thoughtful preparation for unexpected changes in weather or emergency repairs outside the home. Firewood management became a central part of winter routines. Families monitored their stacks carefully, moving logs from outside piles to indoor storage areas. Each piece of wood carried the memory of summer labor, now transformed into life-sustaining heat. Tending the fire was a shared responsibility. Someone added wood early in the morning, someone else adjusted the embers midday, and at night, a final piece was placed to maintain the warmth until dawn. Every crackle of the fire felt like a response to their effort months earlier. During brief periods of daylight, villagers ventured outside to check on animals. Feeding them required careful planning, as stored hay and grain had to last through the entire season. Breaking ice for water, clearing paths to shelters, and reinforcing protective walls were essential parts of this winter routine. Though the work was quick and cold, villagers performed it with patience, grateful for the animals that supported their livelihood. Snow clearing also became part of the rhythm. Paths from cabin to cabin, or from homes to storage sheds, had to remain usable. Villagers used wooden shovels to carve routes through deep drifts, working together to keep the community accessible. This daily effort ensured that families could check on each other, share supplies, and maintain steady routines, even when storms made the world outside feel heavy and still. In quieter hours, winter allowed time for crafts and skills often set aside during busier seasons. Adults carved wooden utensils, wove baskets, or shaped hooks and fasteners from metal scraps. Children practiced knot tying, simple carving, or small weaving tasks. These crafts weren't hobbies. They created useful tools that supported daily life. The calm of winter nights made these activities feel almost meditative, their slow pace fitting perfectly with the season's stillness. Food preparation also continued in winter, though in smaller, steadier cycles. Broths simmered for hours, grains were ground by hand, and herbs from past summers were added to dishes for warmth and comfort. These tasks kept families nourished, reminding them that their earlier work, planting, gathering, preserving, had real purpose. Every warm meal became a reflection of months of preparation, made possible through divine mercy and foresight. Villagers used winter evenings to check their storage cellars as well. They monitored moisture levels, examined barrels for leaks, and inspected jars to ensure that nothing spoiled. These inspections were slow and deliberate, often done by lamplight. The quiet concentration felt like a winter ritual, a way of caring for the home while nature rested outside. Social routines also shifted during winter. Families visited neighbors when weather allowed, offering small gifts like warm drinks or preserved berries. These visits brought emotional comfort, breaking up the long stretches of darkness. Soft conversations, shared meals, and gentle laughter helped keep spirits balanced through the coldest weeks. Winter work also included teaching. Elders shared stories of past seasons, showing younger villagers how to recognize storm patterns, store food correctly, or track animals in the snow. These teachings weren't formal lessons. They were woven naturally into daily activity. Young villagers learned by watching, listening, and helping, absorbing knowledge passed down for generations. Though winter demanded caution and preparation, it also offered rare moments of quiet reflection. With outdoor work slowed, villagers listened to the wind against the walls, watched snow fall in soft waves, and let their thoughts settle like flakes drifting to the ground. This stillness brought clarity and gratitude for the cycles that shaped their lives. As winter slowly approached its end, subtle signs hinted at change. Days grew slightly longer, ice softened near river edges, and birds returned with faint calls. Villagers noticed these signals with practiced eyes. They began to imagine the coming of spring, not with impatience, but with gentle anticipation. The cycle of work would soon shift again, beginning its steady rhythm anew. Through every season, from the coldest nights to the warmest days, the work of northern villagers remained steady, grounded, and deeply connected to the land. Their patience and preparation allowed them to thrive in a place where nature ruled every hour. Travel in remote northern villages of the 1800s was not something done casually. Distances were long, landscapes were unpredictable, and weather changed with little warning. People moved only when they truly needed to, whether to visit a neighboring settlement, trade goods, check distant traps, or deliver an important message. Because travel meant braving cold winds, deep snow, and silent forests, villagers approached it with calm preparation, trusting that safety came through caution and the mercy of Allah who protects those who take careful steps. Before any journey, even a short one, families prepared quietly. Clothing was layered thickly, boots packed with extra warmth, and small bundles of food were wrapped and tucked into sacks. Travelers checked the sky, listened to the wind, and studied snow patterns to understand what the land might hold. No one rushed out the door. They moved with intention, grounding themselves in the rhythm of nature before stepping into it. The moment a traveler began walking, the world outside felt wider. Snow crunched softly beneath each step, and breath formed pale clouds in the crisp air. The path ahead was often narrow and faint, marked only by previous journeys or by the memory of terrain. Silence surrounded them completely. No distant hums, no carts rattling, only the steady sound of walking through untouched snow. This quiet was calming rather than unsettling, encouraging travelers to focus on the path with steady minds. Short distances could take hours. Snowdrifts sometimes reached the knees, slowing movement. Icy patches demanded careful footing. A strong gust of wind could erase footprints or blur familiar landmarks. Yet even when the environment made travel difficult, villagers accepted it peacefully. They understood the land's nature and adapted to it rather than fighting against it. Progress was slow, deliberate, and patient. Some journeys required pulling a small sled loaded with goods, firewood, preserved food, tools, or woven items to be traded. The runners of the sled whispered against the snow, creating a soft sound that accompanied the traveler like a companion on the road. These sleds made transportation easier, but they also required strength and balance, especially across uneven ground. Travelers often paused along the way to rest, leaning against a tree trunk or crouching behind a snowbank to shield themselves from the wind. These pauses weren't moments of exhaustion, they were quiet reflections. The stillness of the land reminded them of their place within it. Looking out across miles of snow-covered terrain, they felt both small and deeply connected to the world crafted perfectly by the Creator. During longer journeys, people memorized natural markers, a uniquely shaped rock, a cluster of pines leaning slightly east, or the curve of a frozen river. These signs replaced maps and guided them safely across distances where paths might vanish after a single snowfall. Travelers moved with an unspoken knowledge passed down through generations. When the sun shone, its reflection on snow created a dazzling brightness. Travelers narrowed their eyes or pulled wool hoods tighter around their faces. On overcast days, the landscape looked softer and blended into pale shades of grey and blue, making it harder to distinguish sky from ground. Either way, movement continued at a steady pace, guided by experience and awareness of subtle details. Occasionally, travelers met others on the path. These encounters were quiet but warm. A nod, a few soft words, perhaps an exchange of news about weather or animal tracks. Nothing elaborate, just enough to share knowledge that could aid the journey. Then, with mutual respect, they continued their separate paths, leaving only fading footprints behind them. Sometimes the travel included crossing frozen lakes. The surface glittered beneath a layer of frost, cracking softly in some areas, silent in others. Travelers tested the ice carefully, listening for the deep, reassuring stillness that meant it was safe. Crossing over such vast, open ground felt both freeing and humbling, as though the earth and sky momentarily merged into one silent world. Inside the forests, travel felt different. Trees blocked the wind, creating pockets of calm where snow fell more softly. The air smelled of pine and cold earth. Squirrels or birds occasionally rustled branches overhead, adding gentle sounds that felt like small company along the way. Forest paths required careful watching, but they also offered a kind of shelter that open terrain could not. Reaching even a nearby settlement felt meaningful. The sight of smoke rising from chimneys signaled warmth and hospitality ahead. Travelers quickened their steps slightly, not from urgency, but from the comforting knowledge that rest was near. Upon arrival, they were greeted with soft voices, warm drinks, and a shared appreciation for safe passage through a land that demanded respect. As night approached, travelers sometimes stayed with neighbors rather than attempting the return journey in darkness. Sunset came quickly in winter, and the cold deepened sharply after dusk. Staying the night became an act of wisdom. Inside those unfamiliar cabins, warmth and kindness bridged any distance between families. Stories were exchanged, meals were shared, and gratitude filled the room. Travel may have been rare, but it was meaningful, each journey a test of patience, awareness, and preparation. Villagers moved through the land with quiet respect, knowing nature's rhythms shaped every step. When travel required venturing farther, perhaps to a distant fishing point, a trade post, or a relative's cabin, villagers prepared with even greater care. They packed extra layers, small bundles of dried food, and a flask of warm broth. Before leaving, they checked the sky one last time, listening to the wind's tone and watching how the trees moved. These signs, subtle but familiar, helped them decide whether the path ahead was safe. They understood that every journey depended on caution, patience, and the protection granted by Allah to those who take thoughtful steps. Longer routes often followed frozen rivers. These icy highways stretched across the land, smooth and unobstructed. Travelers glided their sleds along the surface, listening to the faint sounds beneath the ice, soft cracking, distant echoes, or deep stillness. Each sound carried meaning. A quiet, firm tone meant safety. A trembling echo suggested caution. Moving along these rivers required awareness, but also brought a sense of calm. The flat surface made progress steady, almost meditative. Occasionally, snowstorms swept across the landscape while someone was mid-journey. Visibility shrank quickly, paths disappeared, and the wind pressed hard against every step. In such moments, travelers relied on instinct and preparation. They wrapped their scarves tighter, kept their heads down, and searched for familiar landmarks even through the blur. If the storm grew too fierce, they sought shelter behind a cluster of trees, near a rock formation, or in a small lean-to built for emergencies. They waited quietly, trusting that storms, like all things, would pass. When the wind softened and the snow drifted gently once more, travelers continued forward. Their footprints disappeared behind them, swallowed quickly by falling flakes. Yet the land ahead looked clearer, the horizon more recognizable. Moments like these taught them humility, not in fear, but in respect for the environment Allah created with such power and balance. They learned never to underestimate the northern climate, and never to take a safe journey for granted. Reaching small outposts or seasonal cabins brought relief. Even the simplest shelter, a wooden hut with a stone hearth, became a refuge. Travelers lit small fires, warmed their hands, and rested before continuing. Inside, silence was comforting. The crackle of fire echoed off wooden walls, and the warmth felt like a welcome embrace after hours in the cold. These pauses weren't luxuries. They were essential parts of the journey. In some cases, Travel involved transporting goods across long distances. Families carried bundles of dried fish, hand-woven items, or preserved food to share or trade. They secured these items tightly on sleds, careful not to let anything shift during the journey. Every object had value, not for wealth, but for survival. Sharing resources between villages strengthened bonds and supported the entire region. Travelers also kept an eye out for tracks in the snow. The footprints of animals, hare, fox, deer, told stories about movement in the area. Fresh tracks indicated changing conditions. Older ones hinted at safe, undisturbed paths. Reading the snow was an essential skill, passed down from elders who had learned to understand the quiet language of the land. During long walks, the mind often drifted. Travelers reflected on their families, the tasks awaiting them, or memories of past seasons. The solitude of the journey, combined with the stillness of nature, created space for calm thought. Even the slight sting of cold on their cheeks felt grounding, reminding them of their place in a vast, balanced creation. Near the end of a journey, fatigue settled into the body, but so did anticipation. Travelers recognized familiar trees, distant hill shapes, or the subtle slope leading toward home. With each step, the thought of warmth and rest drew closer. The final stretch always felt gentler, guided by a quiet sense of relief. Returning home brought comfort beyond words. A soft knock on the door, the rush of warm air greeting cold skin, and the welcoming glow of the hearth were all part of the ritual. Families listened to stories of the journey with calm attention, grateful for safe return. The traveler removed layers slowly, letting warmth soak into muscles tired from long hours in the cold. Travel didn't happen often, but its rarity made each journey meaningful. It reminded villagers of the vastness beyond their cabins, the strength required to cross frozen terrain, and the quiet connection shared between distant settlements. Every trip, no matter how routine, reinforced their respect for the land and the guidance that allowed them to move safely across it. And as evening settled again, travelers rested peacefully, knowing that the land would soon cover their footprints with fresh snow, resetting the world into quiet stillness once more. Life in remote northern villages of the 1800s was shaped by hardship, but woven through those challenges were small joys that lifted spirits and made each day feel meaningful. These joys weren't grand or extravagant. They were gentle, quiet moments that brought warmth to cold seasons and comfort to long nights. Villagers learned to appreciate simplicity in ways that softened the weight of their routines, recognizing that true ease came through the mercy of Allah, who allowed even the smallest comforts to become sources of calm. One of the simplest joys came from the hearth. After hours of work in freezing air, stepping into a warm cabin felt like entering a different world. Layers of icy clothing softened, fingers thawed, and faces relaxed. Families often gathered close to the fire just to enjoy the steady glow. The crackling wood, the fragrant smoke, and the gentle warmth wrapped around them like a familiar embrace, easing both body and mind. The quiet pleasures of food also played a role. A bowl of warm broth after a long day, a slice of freshly baked bread, or a handful of preserved berries could bring genuine happiness. These meals didn't need special ingredients. They carried the comfort of familiarity. Each bite reflected the patience invested in preparing for winter, reminding families that even in cold landscapes, provision arrived through divine mercy. Children found joy in the simplest of things, carving little shapes in snow, sliding down small hills, or building tiny homes from sticks and ice. Their laughter echoed softly through the village, bringing a sense of life into the frozen stillness. Even adults paused at times to watch them play, their hearts warmed by the children's energy and curiosity. Another quiet joy came from crafting. Villagers created small wooden toys, woven baskets, carved tools, and simple decorations for their homes. These crafts weren't made for display. They were created because the work itself brought satisfaction. The smooth feel of polished wood, the gentle repetition of weaving, or the subtle scent of fresh shavings filled the home with a peaceful rhythm. Crafting turned cold nights into moments of calm productivity. Music and soft humming also carried joy. A villager might hum near the fire while sewing, or someone might tap a gentle rhythm on a wooden bowl. These sounds weren't performances. They were expressions of comfort, woven naturally into the fabric of daily life. Even simple, unplanned melodies brought warmth into the room. Walking through the village on a calm day offered its own quiet happiness. The crisp smell of snow, the way sunlight glistened on icicles, or the gentle crunch of footsteps created small sensory moments that made the environment feel peaceful rather than harsh. Villagers often paused during chores just to appreciate the stillness around them. Another joy was found in conversation. Even brief exchanges with neighbors, soft greetings, shared observations about the weather, or a kind remark, carried a warmth that nourished the spirit. These conversations were rarely long, but they reminded each person that connection existed in the quiet world they inhabited. Evenings were often filled with gentle storytelling. Elders shared memories of past winters, tales of encounters with wildlife, or lessons learned from the land. These stories weren't exaggerated or dramatic. They were soft, grounding reflections that brought families closer. Children listened with wide eyes, their imaginations warmed by narratives shaped from real experiences. Warm clothing also became a source of joy. A well-made pair of wool mittens or a thick-woven blanket provided more than comfort. They symbolized care. When someone gifted a newly knitted scarf or repaired pair of socks, it carried the warmth of effort and kindness, strengthening bonds between family and neighbors. Fresh snow brought moments of simple pleasure as well. The way it fell in quiet waves, covering rooftops and paths with soft, white layers, made the village look peaceful and renewed. Watching snow drift beneath lamplight made evenings feel magical, not in a mystical sense, but in the soothing way nature offered beauty even in silence. The northern lights, when they appeared, were another quiet gift. Their muted colors dancing across the sky created a breathtaking spectacle. Villagers watched in stillness, not seeking interpretation or grandeur, just letting the soft lights bring a moment of awe and tranquility. Warm drinks were cherished during long winters. A cup of hot herbal tea or warm broth at the end of the day eased tired muscles and cleared the mind. Villagers often shared these drinks without ceremony, offering them as small gestures of care to anyone visiting their homes. Time spent with animals also brought joy. Feeding a gentle horse, watching chickens move about, or hearing the soft bleats of goats made the world feel alive. These interactions reminded villagers of the blessings placed in their care, and tending to animals filled the day with small, grounding moments. And at the end of each day, one of the greatest joys was simply rest. The moment a villager lay under thick blankets, listening to the quiet of the night, they felt a deep sense of peace. The work, the cold, the effort, all of it faded into stillness, replaced by the calm that came from a life lived with intention and gratitude. Some of the most cherished joys in northern village life came from moments shared between families. Sitting together near the hearth, wrapped in warmth, people often exchanged soft reflections about the day. These conversations didn't need excitement. They carried comfort simply because they were shared. A gentle voice, a quiet laugh, or a familiar expression created connection that eased the weight of long winters. These small exchanges reminded villagers that companionship itself was a blessing allowed by Allah, who places tranquility in the hearts of those who support one another. A particularly tender joy came from tending to the fire at night. Adding a final piece of wood, watching the embers glow softly, and seeing the light flicker across the room gave a sense of peace. The fire's warmth, permitted by divine mercy, represented safety. Families often paused for a moment, breathing in the gentle heat before settling under blankets. That brief pause, just watching the fire fade, was enough to calm the mind. The simple act of grooming animals also created moments of quiet happiness. Brushing a horse's thick winter coat or feeding goats in their shelter brought villagers into close contact with the creatures they relied on daily. These animals weren't seen as tools alone. They were living companions deserving of care. Their steady presence added life to the village, and their calm movements helped soothe the people who cared for them. In the daytime, joy often came from sunlight itself. Because daylight hours were short, each moment of brightness felt precious. When sunlight glinted across fresh snow or sparkled on icicles hanging from rooftops, villagers paused to take it in. Those brief flashes of beauty lifted spirits, reminding everyone that even the harshest seasons offered moments of gentle wonder. Some families created small decorations to brighten their homes. A woven mat near the hearth, a carved wooden pendant, or a row of carefully dried herbs hanging from a beam, all brought subtle beauty indoors. These items weren't for display or admiration. They were expressions of quiet pride and comfort, reminders that the home was a haven shaped with care. Another joy came from the calming routine of preparing warm drinks in the evening. Heating water, adding dried herbs, and breathing in a rising steam created a soothing ritual. The warmth of the cup in their hands, the soft aroma drifting upward, and the slow sips taken while sitting near the fire all worked together to settle the mind. Even children enjoyed mild herbal brews, associating the drink with comfort and safety. Villagers also took quiet pleasure in observing the small details of nature. The delicate pattern of frost on a window, the sound of tiny snowflakes landing on wool clothing, or the sight of a fox's footprints weaving through the trees. All of these simple sights brought a sense of connection to the land they lived on. These observations didn't interrupt the day, they enriched it. Evening visits between neighbors were gentle moments filled with warmth. A knock on the door, the welcoming smile of a friend, and the sharing of simple stories added depth to village life. Guests never arrived empty-handed. A small piece of bread, a few berries, or a carved trinket were common tokens of kindness. These gestures strengthened bonds and filled the quiet nights with soft companionship. Elders, with their slow movements and calm expressions, often brought a special kind of joy. Their presence was reassuring. When they shared stories or explained how certain traditions began, the room felt grounded. Children often sat close to them, listening attentively. Elders didn't perform grand lessons. They offered small truths shaped from experience, and those truths settled deeply into the hearts of those who listened. During moments of rest, villagers often found joy in observing the rhythm of their own homes. The steady swing of a door, the soft creak of a wooden floorboard, or the gentle sigh of wind leaking through a small window gap all became familiar sounds that made the house feel alive. These subtle noises created the backdrop of winter life, comforting in their consistency. Another source of joy came from appreciating a job well done. After finishing a task, chopping wood, clearing a path, mending clothes, villagers took a moment to reflect. They didn't celebrate loudly. Instead, they felt quiet satisfaction knowing they had strengthened their home. This sense of accomplishment brought warmth deeper than the fire itself. Family gatherings around meals also created precious memories. Though food was simple, eating together brought peace. Soft conversations, shared smiles, and the warmth of the hearth made every meal feel like a small celebration. The gratitude felt at these moments spread through the entire home, leaving the air filled with contentment. And when the day finally came to an end, one of the deepest joys emerged, the transition into rest. Laying down under thick blankets, hearing the faint crackle of the last embers, and letting the cold fade from their bodies allowed villagers to release the day's weight. Sleep didn't arrive abruptly. It drifted in like falling snow, quiet and steady. Northern life was full of challenges, but these gentle joys, woven through every task, every season, and every home, made the world feel warm despite the cold outside. Life in remote northern villages of the 1800s moved at a pace so gentle and steady that it seemed to follow the quiet pulse of the land itself. There were no crowds, no rush, and no constant noise, only the soft rhythm of daily tasks, the whisper of wind across snow, and the warmth of shared moments inside modest cabins. Days unfolded with a peaceful predictability, reminding villagers that even in harsh climates, calm could grow wherever patience and gratitude were practiced. Their slow, intentional way of living was made possible by the mercy of Allah, who placed tranquility within their simple routines. Mornings began with soft light creeping over frosted windows. The sun never burst into the sky. It rose with caution, like it didn't want to disturb the quiet below. Families woke gradually, taking a moment to listen to the stillness before starting their day. The first sounds in each cabin were gentle, a fire being stirred back to life, the soft shuffle of wool socks on wooden floors, the faint clatter of bowls being set out for breakfast. Nothing rushed. Nothing demanded urgency. Once fully awake, villagers moved into their daily routines with calm determination. Tasks were approached with steady hands and unhurried steps. Gathering firewood, feeding animals, melting snow for water, each chore had a rhythm of its own. These routines provided structure, anchoring families through long seasons of hardship and peace alike. Even the cold air felt like a familiar companion rather than an enemy. Travel through the village was slow but meaningful. Snowy paths wound between cabins, and the soft crunch beneath each footstep became part of the village's natural soundtrack. People nodded to one another as they passed, exchanging quiet greetings that carried sincerity rather than formality. These small interactions held weight. In a place where time didn't rush, even a simple hello felt warm. Afternoons often carried a relaxed tempo. After completing the morning's most important tasks, villagers continued their work with lighter responsibilities, repairing tools, checking food stores, or helping children with simple skills. Light filtered through the windows in pale beams, illuminating dust motes that drifted like tiny snowflakes inside the warm home. The quiet made it easy to focus, and even easier to breathe. Children moved through the day with the same unhurried rhythm. They learned the tasks of northern life by watching their parents. They helped fetch water, carried small bundles of kindling, or practiced carving simple wooden toys. Their laughter was gentle, never overwhelming the calm of the village but blending into it like a soft melody. By late afternoon, daylight softened again. Shadows stretched across the snow, and the land grew cooler. Villagers used this time to finish remaining chores, bringing in extra firewood, checking on animals, or adjusting small repairs. The final tasks of the day weren't stressful. They felt like gentle steps that eased families toward evening, as though the entire community was preparing to breathe out. Inside the homes, the transition from day to night was marked by warm lamplight and the comforting scent of supper. Pots simmered on the hearth, filling the cabin with soft aromas of broth, vegetables, or preserved fish. These meals weren't elaborate, but they wrapped households in warmth and gratitude. Eating together became a ritual, reminding everyone of the blessings that kept them safe and nourished through long seasons. After supper, villagers often turned to quiet activities, mending worn clothing, carving small tools, or simply sharing stories in low voices. These moments were steady and grounding, shaped by the peaceful knowledge that nothing outside demanded their attention. The world beyond their cabin walls moved slowly, allowing them to rest without feeling hurried. As evening settled deeper, the village grew even quieter. Smoke drifted from chimneys in smooth trails. Snow reflected faint moonlight, creating a soft glow across rooftops. Families prepared for rest by wrapping themselves in warm blankets, grateful for the fire's final heat and the shelter that protected them from the cold. Slowly, conversations faded, replaced by the calm crackle of the hearth. Even the wooden beams seemed to relax, releasing gentle creaks as temperatures fell outside. These small sounds became the lullabies of northern life, steady, familiar, and soothing. The gentleness of this daily pace wasn't accidental. It was shaped by necessity, yes, but also by understanding. Villagers respected the land, accepted the seasons, and embraced quiet over haste. Their world didn't reward rushing. It rewarded patience, cooperation, and steady hearts. And as night took hold, the village slipped into a peaceful stillness. Homes rested. Fires dimmed. Families drifted into sleep, knowing the next day would unfold just as gently as the one before, slow, quiet, and full of small, steady blessings. As the night deepened, the silence outside grew thicker, settling softly across the rooftops and snow-covered paths. The village drifted into an almost complete stillness, as if the very air respected the calm found in these remote northern places. Shadows moved gently across the walls as the fire dimmed, and the rhythm of breathing inside each home slowed to match the peaceful world beyond. In these quiet hours, the softness of life in the far north felt even more pronounced, steady, simple, and deeply grounding. Families lay beneath layers of carefully prepared blankets, the warmth lingering from the final embers of the hearth. The faint glow illuminated familiar shapes in the room, the wooden beams overhead, the shelves lined with hand-carved belongings, and the simple tools resting where they had been set earlier in the day. Everything felt exactly where it belonged. This sense of order and quiet stability allowed minds to settle naturally into rest. Occasionally, a distant gust of wind brushed against the cabin walls. But even that sound blended into the night like a gentle reminder of the world outside, vast, cold, and timeless in its cycles. The home stood firm, offering comfort and shelter through the permission and mercy of Allah, who brings warmth into the coldest seasons and calm into the longest nights. With every moment, the stillness grew deeper. Inside this stillness, families drifted in and out of dreams. Sleep didn't come like a sudden drop. It arrived slowly, like soft snowflakes falling one by one. Thoughts loosened, breaths lengthened, and the gentle peace of the village wrapped around each person. The connection between people and the land, between routines and seasons, wove together into a soothing lull that carried them through the night. In those quiet hours, even the smallest sounds felt meaningful. The soft settling of snow on the roof, the gentle pop of a cooling log, or the faint sigh of someone turning in their sleep. These subtle noises became the heartbeat of the home. They reminded villagers that they were safe, sheltered, and held within a rhythm older than memory. A rhythm shaped by nature and strengthened by gratitude. When dawn approached, the sky brightened not with sudden light but with a slow, silvery glow. Morning crept into the village in delicate layers, giving the world time to adjust. Shadows shrank, chill air shifted, and the faint warmth of a new day settled across the snow. The stillness of night began to lift, replaced by the quiet promise of another peaceful day. Villagers stirred gently, waking with minds refreshed by the calm of the night. Children rose slowly, rubbing sleep from their eyes and wrapping themselves in warm layers. Adults rekindled the fire, bringing life back into the cabin with practiced care. The day would bring familiar routines, gathering wood, tending animals, checking food stores, and sharing simple meals. But these routines did not feel burdensome. They were steps in a steady dance, each movement guided by patience and gratitude. As sunlight began to drift between the trees, the entire village embraced another day of gentle living. No rush, no noise, only the soft continuation of a life shaped by simplicity. Villagers stepped outside their homes, breathing in the cold air, watching steam rise from their breath, and feeling the steady rhythm of the land beneath their feet. Life unfolded as it always had, quietly, thoughtfully, and with deep appreciation for every small blessing. This gentle pace of life, far from crowded places, held a sense of clarity that many in the modern world long for. The villagers understood that peace wasn't found in abundance or luxury, but in small routines, warm homes, supportive neighbors, and the steady mercy of the one who sustains all living things. Each day was a reminder that calm can flourish even in the coldest environments. And now, as we reach the end of this slow, soothing journey through northern village life, take a moment to let your mind rest in the quiet we've explored. Let the calm settle into your breathing. Let your thoughts drift gently, like snow settling on a quiet path. These stories aren't just history. They are reminders of how peaceful life can feel when the world moves at a gentler pace. Thank you for listening to this calm story tonight. May the peace of these remote villages bring comfort to your heart, and may your rest be steady, warm, and easy. Whenever you wish to return to another quiet moment in history, I'll be here to guide you. Sleep well,